Hello, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Justine Chappell. I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for CaFÉ. In today's webinar, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about setting up your artwork requirements and guidelines for your calls. We have a lot to cover today, so I hope you find it helpful. The main key items that we'll cover today include creating artwork requirements that meet your needs, providing guidelines for artists to submit high-quality images, understanding how artists upload their images, reviewing artwork images, and then requesting image downloads. The first kind of step before coming to CaFÉ is determining your artwork requirements that you have for artists. So you'll determine how many images you want to accept from each artist, how many audio or video files, if you do accept them, how many of each of those you want. And then when you're ready, when you want to set up your call in CaFÉ, you'll come and fill out this new call request form. You can also access this by clicking Request New Call on the side menu of your CaFÉ dashboard. So when you get to the new call request form, you might be familiar with this. This is where you'll tell us before we add your call to CaFÉ, how you want it to be set up, how many work samples you're accepting, things like that. So first, before we get to the actual work sample section, I want to go over a little bit about the jury types. The jury types determine how your images are handled when artists submit applications. Just a quick preview, scoring by art means that applications are reviewed and scored based on individual artworks. This means that when artists submits images or video or audio files, each of those work samples get separated into a separate application. This means that, they'll submit all at once, but then it gets broken out into separate entries so that those entries can be reviewed and scored individually, and each image or each other file is given a separate score. So this is good for, exhibition type calls for entry. Next, we have scoring by application. This is where applications are reviewed and scored based on a body of work. This is how you will, collect applications that are based on body of work or portfolio. This is where the images or audio or video files, when an artist submits them, they get grouped in together into one application. So instead of splitting them out, they get grouped together, and that entire collection of artwork is given one score in the jury. So that's how they're handled, where scoring by art, it separates the images out. Scoring by application, it combines them. Scoring by application is good for, residencies or public art opportunities where you're reviewing the portfolio, but it can also be used for things where it may be an exhibition where artists are submitting individual pieces of artwork, but you may need more images to represent that one piece of artwork. So this is good, for example, for a sculpture call. So if you are accepting sculptures in which you need them to submit, let's say 1 to 3 images of one specific sculpture, you can use scoring by application so that when an artist submits their application, their images of the same sculpture get grouped into one. And then you have options in the call editor to further allow artists to submit more than one application, meaning they can submit more than one sculpture in which each application has multiple images of the same sculpture. So I'll be touching on that caveat to this scoring by application throughout the webinar, and hopefully you can see it more visually if that's something you are looking for yourself. So that's the first thing you need to determine is what scoring type or what jury type you need for your call. So let's just go with an example of a scoring by art call where I need, an exhibition, and I just need artists to submit multiple images for different pieces of artwork they're submitting. And so next I'll skip down a little bit to the work sample section. So this is where it asks you what types of work sample or media would you like to accept. The first thing you have to do is determine, okay, what kinds of files am I accepting? So is it just images? In which case I would click just images. Do I want images and video? Maybe it's a sculpture call and I want someone to be able to upload a video of their sculpture to show, the 3D view of it. Maybe I want all of them. So I want, to give artists options to upload any media types that they want. So then once you select the types of work samples you're accepting, you're going to be given the, pertaining fields to what you selected. So because I selected all, we now have a field for minimum to maximum number of images, audio, and video files. And we've got the total number of work samples at the bottom. So I'll go over a little bit about how this works. First, let's choose an example of this scoring by art exhibition style. So what I want to do is I'll want to set the minimum and maximum number of, images, audio files that I want to allow. But let's say, I definitely want to focus on images, but I want to give options for audio or video. So let's say my call is accepting, we want at least one image from everybody, and I'm going to let them, submit up to 3 images. Maybe I want an optional audio. So because it's going to be optional, I'm going to set the minimum to 0. And I want them to be able to submit maybe up to 2 audio files. Again, video was going to be optional, so I set it to 0 to make it optional. And the maximum will also set to 2. And then this is where I just want you to pay attention. So the minimum and total maximum number of work samples, this doesn't always mean it's, a sum of what you're entering in the fields above. It's just depending on overall how many work samples do you want to see from artists. Do you want, a minimum of 1 for this case, obviously, because I do have a minimum of 1. But if I were to set this minimum, I guess the minimum usually is the sum. So if I were to set this to 1 here and 1 here, I would want to make sure my minimum is 3, because that means that, at least 3 are required. But for the maximum, let's say I really only do want 3 work samples from every artist. Those work samples can be a combination of video, audio, or images, in which each have their final maximum set. But, if an artist wanted to submit 3 images, that's fine. But if they wanted to submit 1 image and 2 audio, or 1 image, 2 video, or 1 image, 1 of each of audio and video, they can do that too. But the total or the overall determines exactly what you're going to see from artists. So you're not going to see 4 work samples. You're not going to see 0. You need to have artists submit at least 1, 2, or 3 samples. So that's an example of, how to set it up kind of for like an exhibition style. If you're setting it up with scoring by application, in which all the images are going to be grouped together, you could go ahead and set the maximum to the full amount. So here we'd have 7 as our maximum, and at least 1 work sample. Maybe you want to require certain things. So maybe you do want to require at least 1 audio and video to get a full portfolio. Maybe you really want to see at least 3 images. So you can set that up. Scoring by application, because the images and the files are going to be grouped together, you kind of have more room to play with to be able to accept more work samples, because you're not creating multiple applications. You're just creating more space within the application for the artist to represent their work. So this is how you can set it up for kind of portfolio based. Do note that each of these types of files do have a maximum, and this is CaFé's requirement. So we can't allow a call to be set up to allow more than 20 images per artist, or more than 6 audio or video files per artist. So this is not maximum for your call. It's just for each artist. And that kind of helps us, save on our organization space, and is a pretty generous maximum, if I do say so. Just keep a note of those. And then finally, in our other example of, an application-based call where it's more of a sculpture, you may have different things you want to set up. So maybe you do need a minimum of 3 images to represent the sculpture, but you can give them up to 5. And then maybe you just have, let's take off the audio and just do images and video. You can then set this so that you have an optional video. So an artist must submit at least 3 images, therefore 3 minimum overall, or they can submit up to 6 files, in which 5 can be images or 1 can be a video. So that's kind of a good example. But all of this is definitely dependent on what you're looking for. What I'm trying to get at here is that you just need to make sure that the total or the overall number of samples makes sense against your minimum number of images, audio, and video files. And so if we see anything that's not adding up correctly or something that doesn't really make sense, when we add your call details to CaFÉ, we'll probably reach out to you to clarify what exactly you're looking for. Okay, so let's talk about what does happen after this. So, obviously you'd fill out the rest of the call form, and that would submit your request to us that you're ready to add a new call to CaFÉ. And once you submit that, we will go in and set up your call. So let's go into CaFÉ. Logged in as an administrator here, and let's get into our demo call. And I'll go to the call editor. So we will add those basic details you put on the form. And one thing in regards to artwork requirements is that you'll want to check that we added those fields that you created or those that you filled out correctly. So in this particular case, we've set up the images, audio, and video to reflect that what was on the call form. So if you just go to the application editor tab and go to the work sample requirements section, you'll see that we have entered it here. You'll notice you can't edit this section, and that's because image handling is a little bit special in CaFÉ, and it affects a few different things. So only CaFÉ staff can update your work sample requirements. But if you need to update these, all you have to do is ask us, and you can just email us or submit a ticket. Let us know that you need to update or change this. If we've entered it wrong from the call form or something doesn't look right, definitely make sure you reach out to us before you publish your call so that we can adjust those for you. Sometimes as well, it's kind of easier to describe what you're looking for in, plain sentences. So we're happy to kind of work things out with you to determine exactly what the requirements that you need to set up. I also want to talk about how the total media can affect calls that charge more than just an entry fee. They may charge per additional work sample. So it's important to know that if you are scoring by art and in which, you're jurying by individual pieces of artwork, and if you are accepting an entry fee, no matter how many images, let's just say images, no matter how many images an artist submits, they pay, for example, $15 for an entry fee. That's fine. You would just make sure that in your product editor, you set the entry fee to $15 and you just have that single entry fee there. But if you charge per additional media fee, what you need to know here is that the media fee, so the charge that gets applied to each additional image, will apply to each additional image above the minimum. So the minimum needs to be set to the number of images that will be covered by the entry fee, and then each additional after that will be charged the media fee. So in this example, what we have is a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 5. And if we come here to our product editor, this means our minimum of 2, it covers, which is $25 entry. That covers the first 2 images. And then we're going to charge $5 for each additional above the minimum up to the maximum. So that means that the 3rd image, 4th image, and 5th image will be charged $5 each. There's not a way to make it so that an artist can submit 1 or 2 images for $25. Just the way that it's set up in CaFÉ to be able to charge additional media fees, the minimum needs to be set to whatever is covered by the entry fee. So the artist must meet that minimum to be able to just pay the entry fee. So that's just a little bit about how entry or media fees relate to the artwork requirements. So be sure you pay attention to that as well. Again, we can help you set things up. If you're able to describe it to us, what you're looking for, we can help you set it up the way that you need. So once you verified your work sample requirements are correct, obviously, before you publish your call, you'll need to build out the call details in the event information tab, which is where I am here. And in the call listing details section, you'll want to make sure you're fully describing the application requirements, which includes your work sample requirements. So this would probably be best in the application requirements section. Here's where you'll outline the requirements for completing the application. This can include other things that you may have artists submit, such as, resume, statement, references, anything like that. But it's really important that you do iterate the artwork requirements. And so you can go ahead and put those in there. You can list it out kind of like we have it in that application editor page, or you can put it into kind of plain words here into full sentences so that when an artist reads it, they kind of understand exactly what's allowed. So in this case, you must submit a minimum of 2 images. You can also submit additional image, audio, or video files, not exceeding a total of 5 maximum work samples. And here we have that overall requirement as well. So it's nice to kind of iterate that so that when an artist is looking at those call details, they know exactly what they need to prepare for ahead of time. I'll go ahead and show you the call details preview. So this is what that previous page looks like to the artist. We do have those work sample requirements listed here, but those are kind of general information. So it's nice to be able to kind of talk about those work sample requirements again in kind of plain terms that an artist may understand a little bit better. The other thing that's important to know is that whatever information you put here needs to match the information that is set up in your call. So sometimes we are previewing calls before we publish them for you, and we notice that you say that you're accepting a minimum of 2, but maybe your minimum is set to 0, meaning that any artist can go in and accidentally forget to upload images and be able to accept it without, or be able to submit their application without putting in any images. And that would, create problems down the road. So you want to make sure that your work sample requirements in your call description matches exactly the settings that are set up for your call. Like I said, if you need to make any changes to the artwork requirements, contact us to do so before publishing. But obviously in the event information tab, you can edit this as needed. So just know that you can't just go in here and edit it and it'll update for your call. You actually need to contact us to edit the settings itself. And then the other thing I want to mention for this part is to make sure you're further elaborating on what work sample artists need to submit. And that means, not just the number of images, but what kinds of images. This is more applicable to scoring by application calls. So let me actually go into our kind of sculpture demo call. Here's that. So in this example of this call, we are accepting sculptures in which multiple images are allowed per sculpture. And you'll see we've iterated the application requirements and the media requirements here as well. Now, what I mean by, further elaborating is to describe exactly what images you need. So maybe as a sculpture exhibition, you want to see one image of the full view of the sculpture, but each additional image must be, a detail shot or a different view of the sculpture. So as you can see here, we've further explained that, saying, one of your images must be full view, your additional images should display different angles or further detail. So this is also applicable to calls that are portfolio-based. Maybe you should say if you're allowing, 5 work samples, at least 3 of those need to be images of past work, and then 2 of those need to demonstrate skill in different disciplines. If you have different requirements for what artwork you're actually wanting to see from the artist, you need to be able to describe that on your call details so they can further see that as well. And if you do have kind of complex requirements or you're looking for very specific things from artists, not only is it good to add it here to your call details page so that when the artist reviews the prospectus, they're reading through this and they can see and prepare ahead of time, but it might also be a good idea to go into your application editor and create a custom form question that further defines this and puts that same information on the application form. You can see here we've built an informational only question. This means that it's just putting text on the application. It's not an actual question itself. And when I preview the application page, I'll show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like to the artist when they're applying. And we've added this informational only to further iterate, what images that they need to submit. This one actually describes that as a sculpture exhibition, they can submit 1 to 3 images per sculpture, and they need to submit all those images at one time. But if they need to submit multiple sculptures, they'll need to apply as with a separate application. So again, this is for, a very specific call type, but if you are accepting scoring by application if you're accepting images by scoring by application, you want multiple applications allowed per applicant. In this case, it would be multiple sculptures allowed per applicant. You can come to the jury type section of your information page and increase the number of applications allowed per applicant. So that's why the application form, having those information on the application, makes it so that artists can look at this before they actually submit their images and make sure that they're submitting exactly what you need from them. And if you're not elaborating on this extra information, artists may not provide the samples you need to make a proper decision. And it also helps jurors so that, everything's organized the way it should be organized. All right. Let's talk about, the artwork image files themselves. And I am going to be talking mostly about images because that's our primary media type, but I'll touch a little bit on the other requirements as well, or the other file types. So when you are putting in your application requirements, I know some people like to include information about what requirements there are for the file itself. Now, be sure if you are putting the image requirements, such as, the file size, the image size, the file type, you're not putting in any old requirements. It actually has to meet CaFé's requirements for files. Artists can only upload images or audio or video files that meet the CaFé requirements. These are actually found we have an Artist Help Center page. This is what it looks like. It's called Uploading Media. And this is where we list the acceptable file formats for each of the different media types. Now, you'll want to make sure if you are putting that kind of information in your call, you put in this information. So these are the minimum requirements for CaFé. For CaFé, the file type needs to be JPEG only. It needs to be, the image needs to be 1200 pixels or greater on the longest side. So 1200 is the minimum. The file size needs to be under 5 megabytes, and then the color profile is recommended sRGB or else it won't be accepted by our system. So when an artist uploads an image to CaFé, as long as it meets these requirements, you're good to go. You may have further requirements that even if they meet CaFé's requirements, maybe you want to make sure an artist submits larger images. Just know that CaFé won't be able to enforce those requirements because it's only set to what we have here. But it's not a bad idea to encourage artists to submit, larger image sizes. We'll talk about this a little bit later on when we talk about reviewing artwork, but, if you want, you can include in your call details information. You can say, artists need to submit images that are at least 1200 pixels on the longest edge, but standard recommended size is maybe at least 1920 pixels on the longest edge. Even better is something larger than that. As long as the file size is under 5 megabytes, the image can be as large as they would like it to be, and that would actually present better to the juror. So it's good to describe to artists what is recommended, but still iterating that these are the requirements. Same thing goes for audio and video files. When I show you the artist side, I'll actually touch a little bit more on these things, but we've got those listed file types here. These are the file requirements for audio, and these are the file requirements for video. You don't have to include these things in your call details either. It's just if you want to, make sure it meets CaFé's requirements. If you are further asking for things for your artwork and your details, one thing you need to know is that you don't need to ask the artist to name or label their images in a certain way. So there's no need for naming conventions because CaFé doesn't actually keep the name of the file when an artist uploads it to their portfolio. I'll show you this in a minute, but when they upload it, their file name doesn't go anywhere. So it's redundant to make artists, or it's extra work to make artists change the file name of their image if they're just going to upload it to CaFé because it wouldn't matter anyway. So you don't need to tell artists to label their image files with their last name followed by the artwork title or year. And then finally, in your call details, we do, think it's a good idea if you encourage artists to submit, professional quality images. We all know some artists don't submit the highest quality images. Sometimes they submit images that are blurry or aren't centered correctly. And we in CaFÉ try to present resources to artists to encourage high quality images, but artists don't always see what we put out there. So if they are going through your details and your requirements, and you include a note to make sure they're taking high quality images of their artwork, they'll be more likely to follow those. If you do want to provide them information, you can use the resources that we provide. Here's an example. CaFÉ, we put out a blog post about photographing artwork, and this is just kind of a nice guide to go through kind of the basic steps of taking a good picture of an artwork, making sure you're in the right lighting, making sure you have your, diffused lighting, angles, all those things. So this could be a really good resource to even just include in your call details so that artists know where to find it. We also have a guide for preparing the artwork images. So once they've taken those photographs, we have some information about, understanding CaFÉ's image requirements, optimizing the images so that it's the, under the file limit, but still the largest image it can be. We have some tips for how to size images correctly. And finally, how it affects what the images look like to the jury and how larger images, which I'll show you in a little bit, have a better zoom than these smaller images. So a couple good resources to be able to find this or to be able to provide for artists. And you can put these blog posts, which are found on our website under the blog. You can put these posts in there just to give artists more resources. Just to give you a little bit of a better understanding of how CaFÉ looks to artists and how artists upload their images, I'm going to take you into the artist side. So let me log into my account here. So this is an artist account. And if I go to my portfolio, you see we have some images uploaded, but I'm just going to kind of give you a glance at what it looks like to upload images, audio, and video files. So I'll click Add Media and select image type. I'm going to upload an image. So I'm going to choose a file. And you'll see we have some of those resources about, or some of that information about the requirements there. Click Choose File. I'm actually just going to upload one from my computer. And this is kind of what I want to show you as well. So this is the fields that artists need to fill out in order to upload their image. So this is good to know because you don't need to go in and ask artists to list their artwork title, list the size, list the price or the year. This will already be collected when an artist uploads their image, and it will be transferred into those applications so that you don't need to ask for it. It'll all be provided for you. So I'm not going to fill this out right now, but I'm just going to show you, artwork title, medium, size. They can select if it's for sale, and if it is for sale, they have to put a price or value. If it's not for sale, it's optional to put a price or value. Year completed is required. They can select what discipline this piece falls under. They can say if it's a public art piece, in which case they would, click yes and maybe describe the location in the program. And then they can also add a description of the artwork itself. So all this information gets included in their applications and for the jury to review. For audio samples, they can either upload a file with these file formats, or they can add a link. So they can use a URL to link to SoundCloud, Spotify, any other online link that is publicly available. They can put in the URL, and that will make it so that they can have that link embedded in their application, and they don't actually have to upload the file itself. So let's just say I did upload a file. Again, here are some of those fields that are required for the artist to incorporate. The same goes for video, in which they can upload the file directly, or they can use a Vimeo or YouTube link. Those are the only ones that are available at the moment, but they can enter that link, and that would mean that the link itself gets embedded so that the juror or you, the administrator, when you're reviewing applications, can just click and view the video straight from the application. You don't have to look at an uploaded file or you can, view it right on the site. So some options there for artists. Again, if they were to choose a file or whichever they are uploading, they'll enter in those kind of video specific fields there. All right, so that's what it looks like to upload images to their portfolio. Once they get uploaded there, it gets added to their portfolio and they can organize it here and view all the images, audio, and works video files. When they're ready to add their images to an application, the process basically involves just going to the application to fill it out. So I have some that are started here just to kind of show you. Let's start with this kind of artwork exhibition example. So this is for an exhibition, and the images that I submit will each become their own entry. So they'll fill out the form questions as normal. They'll answer any questions here. And once they have filled out all their application questions, they get to the work samples portion. The work samples portion will list the artwork requirements, and they just need to meet this total media requirements in order to be able to submit their application. As you can see, I filled out the application, but if I were to click Save Application, we get an error message, which means that we have yet to choose our work samples. If I were to go over the maximum, which I can't, because I only have 5 in my portfolio, it would also give them that error message. So for this example, what I'm going to do is submit these 2 pieces actually, and I'll click Save Application. Now that I've met those requirements, I'll be taken to this page where I can determine the categories that I have set up for this call, making sure that they're set correctly. I'll save those. I'm ready to check out, and I'm not going to submit it now because I don't have a coupon code for the setup. But if I were to submit this, once I submit it, the entry itself would then get separated into those each additional pieces. So this would become one application, and then this work sample would become another application. Each of these answers to these custom questions will get transferred over to each application. So that's an important thing to note because when an artist is filling out the application, the answers to their questions will apply to each of their work samples they're submitting. So if you have them answer any questions specific to their specific pieces, what you might want to do is either keep it generic or keep it vague and say, explain your overall artistic experience or process, or explain something about your artwork in a general sense. Or you can say, explain the materials used for each artwork, but make sure you list out each artwork in this answer. That way, when they submit their application, the information for each individual piece of artwork is transferred to each of those applications. So kind of again, recap, you have one set of application questions, and then each work sample gets separated into each individual application. For a scoring by application call in which the images get grouped together, the application questions are easier. They just kind of apply to that application. Nothing is happening where they're splitting out or anything like that. So you can ask any of the questions you need that are general to all of the artwork samples that the artist is uploading. So again, they can go through and answer these questions. We've got that media requirement information at the top here saying, I'm going to submit up to 1 to 3 images per sculpture, but for this application, it must be, separate. So I'm only going to submit images of the same sculpture. You can see here we have a full view and a detail view. So I'm going to submit those 2 images of the same sculpture, and I'll save that. Because it is a scoring by application call, I actually can reorder the work samples on this page. So that maybe I do want to make sure the full view is shown first, the detail view is shown second. So I'm going to save that order, and then they can be switched so that when the juror sees it, they see the full view first. And then when I save that and I go ready to check out, I can then submit that application. And in this case, when I have actually submitted it, it will stay as one application. It won't get separated out or anything like that. So that's kind of a general overview of what it's like for an artist to apply to the call with artwork. And I hope that gives you a little bit of an inside view of what it looks like. It's pretty simple for artists, and As I know, I've been speaking a lot about the difference between scoring by art and scoring by application because they are two totally different ways to set up your call. It's not very obvious to artists, and that's intentional. We want to make the process as easy as for artists to submit as possible. So for them, all they're doing is following the instructions given to them by you to determine what kind of images, audio, or video files they need to submit. But they don't necessarily know. They can imply or they can infer, or if they've been with CaFÉ for a while, they'll figure out there's a difference. But that in general, exhibition style calls, once they submit their images, they do see different separate entries for each of those images. Or if they are applying to a lot of residencies or public art calls, when they submit applications, their images stay grouped together. But it's not really obvious to them that there's a difference unless they pick up on it. So that's just so that we can keep it as simple as possible for artists. The next thing I want to talk about today is reviewing the artwork images, and we'll talk about reviewing it as an administrator and as a juror. So let's go into our events management page, and there are about 3 ways an administrator can review the artwork for a call. The first is to, go to the event management page, load the call, and when you click on the application status that you want to view the applications for, you can come in here, click the application ID number. This takes you to the application page so you can see all the information that the artist uploaded, all the answers to the questions, and then of course you can see the artwork itself. And if you click on it, you can view the work sample. You can also view the additional information provided by the artist when they uploaded it. Then once you view that one, you can click Next Application at the bottom. That will take you to the next application. In this case, we've got the same artwork. You'll see later on why it's a duplicate version, but pretend this is a different image, but you can view those images in that way just by going through these application pages. So that's one way. The second way is to go to the slideshow, which is in the event management page, clicking on View Slideshow. This is another way to view the artwork. It's going to show you all the images per application. In this case, it's going by application. It's grouped together into one. So you can go in here and you can click through it. This is very similar to the last step or last option I just showed you, but instead of going through all the application pages, you're just looking at the artwork, and then you can go click to the next set of images for the next application. And then the last way as an administrator is to go to the jury administration page. Actually, I'm going to go switch our calls again. Now, this only applies to artwork that's in the received status because only artwork in the received status gets displayed on the jury side of things. But if you have everyone in received, what you can do is come to jury administration, click on View Scored Applications, even if they're not scored yet. And then you'll be shown a list of all of the applications and all of the images, and you can click this. You're probably not seeing this additional pop-up window that it just showed me because of the way Zoom is showing the screen, but it did pop up with a window to show me the full-size view of the image. So you can use that as well. Maybe if I actually open this in a new tab, you can see what I just saw. There we go. So that's another way you can go through and swiftly review that artwork. There we go. Those are all the same image. And again, you'll see in a minute why. So as an administrator, you can view it that way. You can also add yourself as a juror so that you can review it exactly in the same way that the juror can view it and have access to those additional tools that I'll show you for reviewing artwork. So before you log in as a juror, you'll want to make sure you set your jury permissions to however you want to view it for the jury. This means that you come to the jury administration page, make sure your jury is set to in progress, set the scorecard style to whichever view you want the jurors or whichever view you want to use for the reviewing the artwork. You can choose slideshow view, list view, or grid view. If you are using a scoring by application call, the ones that group all the images, grid view won't be available to you, but you can choose between list and slideshow. Once all those are set up and you've, gone through, maybe you want to hide any of these details from the artwork. You don't care that jurors see how much the price is, so you're going to check that to hide it. Maybe you don't need them to see the artwork references. You can click that to hide it and click save. So once you've done all that, then you can log out of your administrator account and log in with a juror username and password. So you're going to set yourself up with the juror username and password. Actually, I should show you how to do that. Let me log back in as an administrator. You're going to go to the jury tab and click on jurors, and you're going to see the list of jurors you have for your organization. And if you're not listed on here, you can click add new and create a username and a password for yourself. I recommend the username includes something like the word juror in it so that you can differentiate an administrator login from a juror login. Whichever one you log in with will take you to that side of CaFÉ. So you'll set yourself up as a juror, then you'll log out and log back in with your juror account, and you will see the jury side. In this particular example, we've got a few in here to review, and you'll see it's those same artwork images, and you can review artwork this way. So because this is grid view, I'm looking at these individual thumbnails, and I can go in and click. Again, I need to click it in a new tab. You can go in and click, and actually in this case, you can just scroll through each individual image. And this is kind of a nice way, even though it's only showing 3 here, this is kind of a nice way because you can just swiftly click through all those images. You don't have to go through each individual application. It's really nice to be able to review those files. Okay, I do want to quickly show you why image size matters. So you'll see we do have these 3 repeat images, but what you don't know is that each of these image files, while they do meet CaFÉ requirements, they're all different sizes, and that plays really big into the amount that the juror can see. So let's start with our smallest size. This is an image that is 1,200 pixels on the longest edge. So it barely meets the CaFÉ requirements. Obviously, the file's under 5 megabytes. You'll see when I can zoom in, let's zoom in and see how far it can go. Oh, I can only go in a little bit. So I tried to zoom in, and you can see it's kind of already looking a little fuzzy. And that's just because the artist uploaded a relatively small image file. Now I'm going to go in and I will click on, this is actually the next size up. This one is 1920 pixels on the longest edge. So it's a good recommended size. You can see when I clicked zoom in once, I can zoom in again, and that's about it, but that's pretty good. I can see additional detail of this image, and it's a little bit fuzzy, but it's pretty good. You definitely see the talent of this artwork. And then finally, we have this large image here. This one's 4,000 pixels on the longest edge. So it's a really large image, but the file itself is still under 5 megabytes so that it could be uploaded to CaFÉ. And when I zoom in once, I can zoom in again, I can zoom in again and again and again and again, and it goes really far. And I can see all these, cracks in this painting. And I'm not sure how well it's showing up over your Zoom, but it's showing up pretty well, and you can see how far I'm zoomed in. So that just goes to show you that it's good to encourage artists to upload large sizes of images, even though the file itself is meeting the CaFÉ requirements. Again, there's nothing you can do to actually require a 4,000 size limit or something like that. But if you're encouraging artists, it'll, work out better for everyone. Jurors will be able to see more. Artists will be able to be happier with their submission. So let's talk about the last thing we have, which is how to request the image files. So if you don't already know, CaFÉ will let you download the high resolution images to use for whatever you need. Maybe you're using it for the online exhibition. Maybe you want it for promotional materials. Downloading the images is really helpful so that you're not clicking into each of these and trying to save the image, because that will give you only the small version. You can actually just request those high resolution downloads. So to do this, you'll go to the ticket section and you'll send us a help ticket and you'll create a subject, and under issue, you can click on image request. In your message, please note two things. One is if you want what status of images you want, if you want everyone from received, if you want everything from invited or not invited, or if you want all of the images. Let us know what images you want. And then also let us know if you want the artwork names included in the image files. So we have the ability to make sure that the image files that we send you don't include the name of the artist in it. Maybe that's because you're doing a blind jury and you want jurors to review images offline, and instead of CaFÉ, you can make sure that we remove those file names, or we can include them in there so that you can better, match the artwork image to the artist. So let us know those two things and then fill out the rest of the form and click send. When we respond to you, we will send you a zip file to click. And when you click that link, it will download the zip file zip folder to your computer. The folder itself will contain all of the images grouped by category and ordered by the application ID number or the artist title or artist name. And so when we send you those files, you can use them however you need. Just know that we can only send image files. We can't actually send audio or video files. That's not an option in CaFÉ, but if you are needing an image or an audio or video file from an artist, you can reach out to them and let them know that you need them to send it to you. Or you can, if they've uploaded a YouTube link or something like that, you can access that from their application page. So just make sure that when you are downloading these images that you are adhering to the agreement that you gave artists. So if you do want to use images for your promotions, be sure you're including that in your call details as well as your legal agreement, which is your terms and rules to apply. You can outline any terms that say that you have, submitting to this call means that you are letting us use your images for X, Y, Z. And don't go beyond those because, it's really important that, especially these days, that artists are given credit and their artwork is only being used in the ways that they agree to. So that's just how to request image files. And that's what I have for you today about, work sample requirements, how to accept images and audio and video files, how to set up your call, what it looks like to the artists, and how to review images. I have a question in the chat first. So it says, in my exhibition earlier this year, there were apparently a place for artists to specify an insured value as well as a price. This caused some confusion. I didn't see it in this demo, but is there a way to exclude that info in your next call? There's not a separate place in CaFÉ itself to add in an insured value and a price. And when an artist uploads in CaFÉ, let's go back to it. Oops. When an artist uploads in CaFÉ, they only are given, let me actually get through this. They're only given one price or value thing, and that should only accept numbers or decimals. Perhaps a particular artist put the insured value in the description because this description box can accept anything and artists can put whatever they want in this description. So it's possible that they included that, but if they include it in the description, only one price on the jury side should show up here, where it is listed as, I hid the price. That's right. Let's see on this side. Let's log in as an administrator again. I have a lot of accounts. Where is it? There we go. Whoops. Nope. So on the application page, they should only have a spot for one price. So I'm not exactly sure how an artist, unless they put it into the description here, there's only a spot for one value or price. There's not really a way to exclude certain information from an artist's upload, but you can certainly include in your prospectus, in your application page itself, information to make sure that their artwork information only includes whichever one you're looking for, if that's the insured value or if it's also the price. If you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out to the support team and we can further look into your specific case. Thanks again for joining our webinar today, and be sure to join our next webinar next month.